Hey everybody, it's me, Maria Pirita, and this is another episode of the Uncharted Veterinary Podcast. I am filling Stephanie Goss's metaphorically big shoes today. Andy and I have a great mailbag today. We are talking about what to do when we're really stuck in the middle, when a team is super energized, having this great idea, getting together, and kind of getting a plan for this idea, but then, a technician comes back from vacation and they're like, this idea is dangerous for the pets, and now there's kind of this weird energy. Practice owner is kind of like, I don't know what to do. It's a good concern, but at the same time, I don't want this person to feel defeated. And so Andy and I have some really good stuff for you. We talk about how the situation could be prevented in the future, but also what to do if you are in that situation. Guys, we want our teams to have ideas. We want them to have fun. There's going to be concerns. How do we give that feedback in a way that's not defeating? And so without further ado, let's get into this episode.
And now, the Uncharted Podcast.
And we are back. It is me, Maria Pirita, with Dr. Andy Roark on the Uncharted Veterinary Podcast. I am so happy that we're here because I love the mailbag that we've got today, Andy. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I love that I love your hosting. I love that you just took it off and ran with it. And I'm like, oh, this is what it feels like to be introduced by someone else. I love it. This is a great feeling.
Good. Yeah, I should have done a nickname. You always do.
You don't know. Trust. Let me tell you. Once you start, people will never let you finish. It's been 300 episodes. The nicknames. I wake up at night just going, oh, I can't. I don't know any more songs.
I always wondered if anybody else ever greets Goss that way, the one nickname that maybe people remember, you know what I mean? And that's the way.
She gets it all the time. Every vet event she goes to, people are like, yeah, people are like, oh, it's Stephanie, pour some sugar on me. No. So whichever one stuck with that person, that's what they say to her. It's really funny. It's really funny. I think Stephanie, the wind beneath my wings, Goss is probably the most common one that I hear. But I have heard all kinds of other ones. Yeah.
Karma is a cat, I think, is the one that whenever I see Stephanie Goss, that's what I want to say is Stephanie Karma is a cat Goss. And I don't know why.
Yeah, there's one that sticks for everybody. And but they do. People are funny. They say it to her all the time. I think it's great. It makes me super happy. Let's go ahead and get into this. So why don't you break out the mailbag question for us? And then we'll do our headspace and our action steps.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one because I have totally been here in this scenario in different phases of the scenario. So I'm really excited for this one. This is actually a community question that came up that you and I kind of started talking about. And I think it kind of creates a really good conversation. But essentially, this practice owner has a team full of super energetic people, super excited to try new things and move forward with fun stuff. And basically, they started together as a team. They decided they were going to have a really fun fundraising event for their angel fund for their internal clinic. And it was going to be some sort of dog walking kind of fundraiser, kind of like those 4Ks that you kind of see. Yep. And there was going to be pictures there for the pets. And of course, the team member that came up with this idea was super excited. The whole team was all jazzed up. And then this one technician comes back from vacation and she presents this concern of, what are we going to do about, this isn't very fear-free, what are we going to do about these pets that, are maybe aggressive or maybe don't like other dogs? This whole thing is not very fear-free friendly. And so as a result, the rest of the team they lost motivation. They're not as excited for the plan. And the practice owner is kind of like, well, I hadn't really considered that. I don't know. But I also don't want to discourage this one team member whose idea it was, who apparently now obviously is kind of starting to shut down, feeling a little discouraged and all of those things. And so I thought that this was really, really good because how many times do we have situations in which the team is really excited for an idea and then this kind of situation comes up and you kind of feel defeated. And I know I've definitely been there both as the practice owner who had to kind of manage this and both as the person with an idea that got, everybody was excited about, but got kind of defeated. And then both also the person bringing up a concern of hey, I don't want to pee in everyone's Cheerios here, but we have to consider this also. And so that's kind of why I thought this was really good. And I think I see a lot of clinics doing, pictures at Santa and the open houses and all of those things. And so what are you thinking headspace-wise, Andy?
So headspace-wise. So first of all, I want to validate the person who comes back with the concern just because I have a good friend. And years ago, she came and she wanted to have coffee. And so we went and have coffee. and she told me her business idea about having one of these like races, like it was one of the obstacle course races, but it was made for people and their dog to do together. And I had the exact concerns of this person coming back. I was like, what if you get aggressive dogs in there? What if there are bite wounds or things like that? I was like, can they run in basket muscles? Can that be a thing? And like, I could kind of tell that she recoiled, like, and again, she was like, oh, thank you very much. And then she just went and did it anyway. And it's been wildly successful.
Okay.
Yeah. And like, she's never had a problem. She's like, no, people are generally pretty good. And, we've got some systems kind of keep dogs and, off by themselves or whatever. And they're separate different groups. And so anyway, she figured it out. But it was funny. But every now and then she'll bring up my basket muzzle suggestion. It's just like the height of bad idea. She's like, basket muzzles.
Basket muzzles while running,
But yeah, so anyway, the events are called Ultimate events.
That's fun.
I would totally do one, except my dog is bad. He would break the course. He would ruin it for other people.
We'll get into that, I think, later on. So definitely for action steps, but
so I get that. Okay. Yeah. I will tell you, so I said that up front of, I want to validate the person with the concern, but let's be honest. In my life, I have been the person with the super fun idea so many times.
Me too.
and then the person comes back from being away and shoots my thing down. And so it is a little bit hard for me to be on that person's side, just regardless. Okay, I want to start laying a couple things down here, just at a high level. I want to say something about fear-free. Just in general, I like fear-free. Don't get me wrong. I do like.
I am certified. I like it too.
Yeah, tell you. Fear-free is one of those things in life, and there's a lot of things in life, where some people latch onto it and they believe that more is better all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
totally.
It's like, well, you've seen it a million times in medicine. It's like, oh boy, if clipping and scrubbing is good, then clipping and scrubbing 6 times is
gotta be 6 times better.
So I love fear-free, and I love that for practices do it. But if you take fear-free all the way beyond what the founder ever meant for it, you know what I mean? It becomes a thing where you just don't do medicine. And I think we all recognize at some level, at some point you have to look at the spectrum and say, what is fear-free enough? Because 100% no fear it's just not realistic for most of us. And again, I'm going to catch heat for saying that, but I think all of us in practice kind of know that. And I wish that it was just you're good or you're not, but it's not. It's always going to be sort of a question of, is this fear-free enough or not? And so anyway, I just mean that to say it shouldn't be yes or no. This is out, this is in. Like, let's talk about what this event really is, I think is the headspace at first. So anyway, at some point, we're going to have to look at it and say, I want to balance our desire for low stress for our patients, full stop.
Yeah.
Like against the idea that I do want to do fun stuff for our owners and for our staff. So I am optimistic that there's nuance here that we can start to talk about, that we can look for balance, that we can look for places of mutual agreement, things like that. I think that that's really good. And so I think that opportunity to find the balance, I think that that's there, and that's where my headspace would be is, let's try to balance everyone's concerns here. I'm confident we can do that. The last thing I sort of want to throw on the table, and just take this with a grain of salt, there's always a thing when the team gets fired up about something and one person is not there. I think oftentimes the person, when they come back, they do feel maybe left out a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Or there's a little bit of a control thing of like, wait a second, be wary of letting people have a veto card where, they can roll in and the team is like, we're going to get massages. And someone goes, oh, we can't take those appointments off the schedule. Don't you know how many people desperately want to get in? Well, that person might have a point, and we should talk about that. But it's a dangerous precedent to say, oh, yeah, if someone complains about what the team is excited about, we're going to shut down what the team is excited about. I'm like, okay, again, I want that person to feel heard, but just be wary of being like, fear-free veto. And that's it.
I would agree. I would definitely agree with you on that. As somebody that one of my clinics, fear-free and AHA, a lot of times we had, like protocols that technically we had to pick and choose. Like, do we follow the AHA or do we follow the fear-free? Because you can't always do both. And similarly, yes, there was appointments that were like 2 hours long and you had to, charge appropriately for that. And clients. And so there is definitely always a balance. So I 100% agree there. I am also very wary of letting somebody have a veto card, but also very wary of somebody who is in an all or nothing situation. So I definitely want to be curious of like, why is this concern mean that we can't do anything at all? Like, I want to dig into that a little bit more and get curious. Like, is there an underlying conflict? Is there maybe like this person really just does feel left out? Maybe they had this idea before and theirs got knocked down because of something similarly. And that's why they're repeating it also. So really trying to stay curious and solution oriented. One thing that I want to say to this practice owner is that this is actually kind of a good problem to have in my eyes. Now stick with me a little bit.
Okay, tell me about
that. Because whenever we're talking about fun, engaging in community events or events with the team and things like that, I would much rather have a team that is super excited for it and passionate and wanting to contribute to it than a team that's made up of nobody wanting to contribute. And like they're really quiet and they don't want to do anything. So in a way, it's just kind of like I would much rather see healthy conflict than like this kind of conflict. But at the same time, like this is something that I want to just say to the practice owner is like, this is a good problem to have. I don't let this be one reason why you don't go gung-ho and excited for their ideas. Like not every situation is going to come up with this particular, back and forth or anything. I think that your willingness to go with the team ideas and like jump in and try and do fun stuff like that, I think that's something that your team probably really values and something that shows that you're a really good leader. And I want you to keep doing that. So that's just my piece for Headspace is this is technically a good problem to have. It just doesn't kind of feel that way. And then the last thing is, there is going to be a lot of, I think, empathy for me as a manager, just because I am oftentimes the one that has really, the idea that's kind of crazy and somebody's like shooting it down. And I'm like, I just wanted you to be just as excited about this idea as I was. Where was that excitement? And so I can feel pretty defeated when people kind of, pick that apart rather than ask questions. So like definitely lean in with some empathy here for both people, the people that brought up the concern, because it's a very valid, real concern, but also empathy for the person whose idea it was. They are probably feeling somewhat defeated and encouraged. So there's going to be some empathy there. And then empathy for the whole team in general, because the rest of them are probably just confused of like, well, I don't know now what's happening. So
yeah, anytime, and this is where my biases are. Anytime the team is excited about something, I really want to make it happen.
Yeah.
Just because I think you really put your finger right on it of like, the opposite problem is so common of nobody wants to do anything. It's hard to get them excited about anything.
That's a much harder one to solve too, I think.
It's so much harder to solve, which is why I am so reticent to let somebody come in and be like, nah, it's not fear-free enough. And again, I hope I'm explaining that well. Like, but that I really do think that's it. It's hard to get people excited about their job. And I think that's so important. And so if they're fired up to do a dog walk and they're all excited about it, like that's worth something. That means something. And so I really, really don't want to get it shot down. And so I am going to be probably a defender of that idea. And my position is not going to be, let's maximize the low stress of the world. It's going to be, let's figure out how to make this work.
Yeah.
And, and again, I'm not going to do anything irresponsible, but to me, I'm going to lean towards the fun and say, look, maybe we've got a place, maybe we have a quiet place for dogs who don't want to be around other dogs. Maybe we have a way for people to come in and then immediately kind of leave if it's not working out. I want to figure that stuff out. I really don't want to take the wind out of my team's sails.
Yeah.
When they have something, especially something that involves the client, something that involves the community, it's just, I really don't want this idea to sink. And so anyway, I think for me, the part of it is not sinking this idea and then also making the person who brings the complaint feel heard and ultimately feel okay. They don't have to be thrilled. And I think that's a big thing I always talk about when we talk about sort of change management is imagine that the idea is a minecart and it rolls on a track. And so you got three kinds of people. You got people who are pushing the idea, you have people who are pushing against the idea, and you have people who don't care. They're just riding in the minecart to see where it ends. You don't have to make the people pushing against the minecart get in love with the idea so they come and help you push. They just need to feel comfortable enough that they'll get into the minecart and see where it goes.
Yeah.
And like, that's it. I'm not trying to, I may not be able to make this person wildly excited about a fun run with other dogs, I need to make sure that I really want to make sure that they feel good enough about what we're doing, that they can be excited about, or at least be happy about it. Also, looking at it, and we talked about this at the beginning, a lot of times when people come in and the group has kind of made a decision and then they come in and they have a concern, sometimes it's just a concern. Sometimes there is an aspect of kind of control seeking, meaning this person's kind of like, I got no say in this.
Yep.
And so I do kind of want to have a say. I would love to give this person a say in the project that involves helping us make it better.
Yes.
So that ideally, then this person also feels like they contributed, they were heard, they got a say. And so anyway, those are all the sort of things in my headspace.
I definitely want to talk about that in the action steps because I have some cool stuff for that. But it definitely occurred to me when I was kind of going through this mailbag of, what is this person's communication style and could this have been avoided? Because sometimes too, it's just how you hear about the news, right? Did this person hear about this event through somebody else who maybe was not as enthusiastic about it? Did they hear about the event, and were just completely shocked and that was their initial reaction in front of everyone? So I think what their initial communication style is and how they like to receive that kind of information is going to be really important. Because if it's somebody that's processing, they're just processing all of the different holes in your plan, right? And maybe it didn't mean to be this big thing that shut down the whole event. Or it could be somebody, like you said, that just kind of really feels left out and they feel like because they weren't a part of this. And so I think kind of getting into the action steps, and I don't want to go in there too far, but that's kind of what I had also there.
One of my favorite sayings is that, vet medicine is full of problem-focused people. And they're like people in vet medicine look for problems. Like that's our job, is to look for problems, to identify problems, to anticipate problems so they can be avoided. And so we've got those muscles built up pretty well. People looking at what you made and telling you what the problem is, that's fairly common in vet medicine. It really is. And so, I'm right there with you as far as like, okay, this is behavior that's not wildly out of place or out of character. Let's take a break and then we'll come back with our action steps. And then one of the things I want to talk about is sort of how we receive these concerns and what we do with them when they come in.
All right, sounds good.
All right. So Maria, you said something that I want to pick up on in action steps right at the very beginning, which is ideally the way we share the plan with the people who aren't there is a real opportunity. So let's jump back in time, and we've got this plan and the team is excited about it. And we know that there's somebody who's not here and they're going to be coming back. Talk to me a little bit about action step wise, spinning back the hands of time. What's important about sort of sharing information with this person who's coming back in? Is there a way that you think that we can set the stage so that the person is not walking in and going, what are you guys talking about? And then who knows what story they hear?
I think for me, one of the things that I already mentioned was definitely knowing the communication style, because that's going to affect my approach to it, but also knowing this individual in general. So like, if I know that this person genuinely likes being a part of these things, then I'm going to approach it a little bit differently than somebody who may not normally like that. So I think some part of it is really just knowing that individual as a person and who they are. But the other part for me is not going to immediately also jump in and be like, we decided we're going to have this big dog walk event and it's going to be this giant thing. Because we also have to remember is a lot of times when we're giving information to our team, the only thing that they hear is the amount of work that it's going to be. And so I think we have to be wary of when we present ideas that have been decided on or as a group or what have you with our individual team members to make sure that we're not, and I think our language is important here too, and we're not talking about this being this giant lift or all of this work or all of these different things, but rather coming and approaching with them and like, hey, we talked about wanting to put together a community event to bring the community together for people to bring their dogs at. And so we kind of shared that. When I say that, do you have any ideas that come to mind? So that way I'm first gathering their ideas and they have a chance to be participating and, a part of the conversation. And maybe I'm not going to use those this time, but I can still tell them, oh, I loved those ideas. I want us to remember this. This is kind of what the team was thinking. And I might maybe start to go into there, but not in the sense of like, I'm going to completely take away their ideas and say, we're not doing them this time. But I want them to at least feel like they have some sort of a voice from the beginning of, these are the ideas that were shared around initially. Yeah. What do you think about these ideas? And kind of collaborate together first before I jump into, this is definitely what we're doing. And this is what you're doing as a part of it. I want to avoid that conversation.
Yeah. I like that a lot. I like the idea of presenting it in a way where they get a chance to give you some type of feedback, right? It's not, hey, well, we're thinking about doing something. And in reality, you've got a whole plan. I'd be more honest and sort of direct about like, this is kind of what we're generally thinking. What's your take on that? I mean, is that something you'd be interested in being a part of? What do you think? And so I think that letting them sort of give their feedback to you as opposed to giving it out publicly into the team.
Yeah.
I think the more you can sort of try to figure out what is important to this person. So let's just say for me, I'm excited about doing this dog run because I think I'm a client relationship builder. That's what I like. But Maria is excited about doing it because she really wants to have an impact in the community. That's that's a thing that's important to her. Well,
accuracy.
I mean, yeah.
I do like to have an impact in my community.
Oh, totally. And so, but then Dave, he's excited because he's a family guy and he loves to do stuff that he can bring his kids to. And, he just genuinely thinks this will be a fun thing for them to get out and do on a Saturday. And so figure out what is this person like? What aspect of this might interest them? What is the why that's going to be motivating for them? Knowing that different people have different whys, and that's okay. But anyway, it helps me present that. The last thing that I would say too is one of the simplest things, one of the simplest reasons to do this is if I craft a message, even if it's an email, and I have to say, hey, this is kind of what we're thinking about. I don't really like that. I like the call, but if I do an email, the first time they hear about it, at least I know they're getting an honest representation of what's been decided and why it's been decided and what we're trying to do. There's nothing worse than when somebody comes in, they get half the story. The underlying why is not really accurate in the way it's presented to the person. And then they go ahead and have a negative emotion, kind of hard to walk them back off of. It's once someone has decided they hate the idea and they've gone public and told people they hate the idea, they're kind of bought into hating the idea.
Well, that's recency bias, right? Like it's literally the bias of the first idea that you heard and the last idea, right? So like in a way, you're getting that first take from somebody else and you don't know what kind of take it was. So it could have been a bad take from that person. I want to be able to control that by being the person to share that information.
But also, like once, and this is just a thing about sort of managing the team and the way that we talk. But once people go public, they feel a pressure to stick to what they said before. You know what I mean? It's like if I say I hate Thai food, and then you secretly give me a Thai food dish, and I like it, and you tell me it's Thai food, I'm going to tell you, oh well, this isn't what I had, or this isn't what I meant. You know what I mean? Like
absolutely.
Like so there is stick to what they said that they thought. So anyway, being the one to deliver the first message and to start to get some feedback from the person, I think that there's real benefit in that. So to me, that's if you've got your time traveling device, go back and
go back in time,
talk to the person before.
Listen to this episode, go forward in time, and then go back in time. Yeah, no, totally. I would 100% agree there. I would also say that I think one of the things too in how we communicate the holes in the plan is really important. So I would actually appreciate this person for bringing up a concern. Like if they do like, oh, well, what are we going to do for the fear-free? Like that is a good concern. And I might be vulnerable enough to say, oh, we hadn't thought about that. But now that you mention it, I would love for you to champion ways in which we could perhaps, reduce fear and stress for the pets that are coming in. That way I'm like, we're not canceling this just because you have this concern, but at the same time, I want to hear this is a valid concern. I want to know about it. And then maybe now you can champion that and they can take ownership of it. So they still have some, kind of like a job, a thing to do, but really come up with all the different ways where we could potentially make this a more fear-friendly event.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think hearing what they say is important. And then sort of second action step for me after time travel back, deliver the message, is when they come with a concern, you want to unpack it in a productive way. And so I think you already hit on the first part, which is thank the person for bringing up the concern. Thank them for being engaged. Thank them for advocating for the pets. I love that you say, own it and be like, you know what, we hadn't really thought about it. Now that you're saying it, it totally makes sense. Let's talk a little bit about, and I just would never bring up the idea we're not going to do this necessarily.
Exactly.
To me, that's a way down the list.
The idea of canceling it and not having it at all is not going to come from me. And I'm hoping it's not coming out of them either, because like the team is so excited about this That is not an option. Hopefully she knows that already, but if not, we may need to talk about that.
If you're really on your game, then you frame this up as, how can we make this even better by leaning into aspects of fear-free or low stress while we're getting these pets together?
Can we
let's take this original idea.
Educate them.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. What if we turned it into a way where we're doing client education? Like, come on, we just took this thing up a notch. Like, let's do that. And again, it's really controlling sort of that tone. And again, I'm not trying to bowl the person over with positivity, but there's opportunities here to take that concern and make this thing better. And so, there's two things I want to dig into to try to understand. And so one of them is, what are your ideas on how we can make this better? The other one really is about, what truly is your concern? What are you really concerned about? What are you really hoping to accomplish? What's really important to you about fear-free in this context? Because it's funny, what will happen sometimes is, Maria will come to me and she'll say, Andy, I have concerns because this is not fear-free. And I will go and add 10 different fear-free, low-stress aspects. But they're not the ones that she was worried about. And so now I've done 10 things. And Maria's still not happy. And now everybody's angry. And it would have been better for me to say, okay, specifically, what are your concerns?
Yes.
What do we want to make sure that we're controlling for or minimizing? What's really important to you here in this context? And get that information before you start trying to fix things. I guess it's so funny. I've seen so many instances where someone has a concern or a complaint or a fear, and another person tries to appease them and does 10 different things, but they didn't hit the specific concern that person had. And so the person does not back down. They are unmoved by all the work that's been done. And both parties end up really frustrated. It's like, that's the voice of experience. Ask the question, get into the specifics. What exactly are you concerned about? And it's funny how often, a lot of times, people won't be able to really articulate for you. They'll say something like, you're going to have, this is a big one. So let's just change it up a little bit, but I like this. Let's say that we're going to delegate a little bit more to our technicians. Let's say that we're going to have our technicians do a little bit more. And some of the doctors will say, no, I think that's bad medicine. And if you let them stick to that and say, that's bad medicine, then then you're giving them the veto card and you're letting them stonewall you. And that can be really frustrating. And I see people all the time who they want to do something with the techs, and one of the doctors says, that's not appropriate, not doing that. The right play at that point is you have to sit down with the doctor, probably privately, and you have to say, help me understand what your concerns are. What? And they go, well, that's just not high enough quality medicine. What specifically is low quality about this idea? Like, what specifically are you concerned about? And one of two things will happen. They won't have a good answer, and that will become obvious. And you say, well, I'm not really hearing... I'm still not understanding exactly what the pushback is here. Or they will have a specific example, or they will say something to you like, well, okay, look, I don't trust Donna. I don't trust Donna.
And you can dig in. Tell me a little more about that. Why not?
Maybe that's valid. Maybe as soon as he goes,
maybe.
Donna, maybe I'm like, you know what?
I have no idea.
I hadn't really thought about the fact that Donna would now be in this position. I have concerns as well. I'm kidding, but also I'm not. Getting to the heart of the issue, what the person really cares about, is really essential for getting buy-in. And so anyway, the way that we investigate that complaint when it comes in, it's really important. We just can't let them come in and go, not fear-free, shutting this down.
It's a coaching opportunity too, honestly, because you don't want a team that's made up of people that just bring up problems, right? Like for me, it's always problems with the solution. So it's always like, okay, this is the problem. Okay, what are we going to do about it? What have you thought about doing? And so too, in a lot of ways, I think like not specifically, I'm going to coach this person right now in this moment, but like thinking about that aspect of like, okay, well, that is a problem. What solution have we thought of already to try and solve that, right? Because I'm going to always constantly be wanting my team, when they do bring problems up, to bring some sort of solution. And like even myself now as an employee, I try to think about, if I'm thinking about a problem, I want to try and, well, have you considered this? And if so, could we maybe do this? So that way it's not, hey, your idea is definitely not going to work because A, B, C, D. It's like, well, have you considered A and B? Because otherwise, what if we did D? And so you're still bringing up an idea that might solve it without just knocking it down as a big no.
I love the idea of the coaching part. I think, one thing that we have not even mentioned, not at all, is the way we approach this. It does depend a little bit on the person who is bringing up the complaint. Is this a pattern of behavior? Is this the person who's always got a complaint, or they never have a complaint? Because honestly, I handle those people differently. If there's someone who always, we're going to get pizza for lunch, like, I have a concern. You know what I mean? It's just 3 times a day they have a concern. There are people like that. And those people are really valuable. And like, they're not making it up, but that's just how they see the world. I'm going to engage with that person probably in a coaching capacity, or I'm going to engage with them given the fact that they often have concerns. And this is just how we kind of have to work with them. Versus if someone comes in and they're always on board. And then they raise their hand and say, or they come to me and they say, I'm really concerned about this. I'm going to listen to that person in the context of, this is not someone I tend to see as shooting down ideas unless they really are concerned. Let's dig into this. And I'm not talking about dismissing anybody, but when we talk about coaching and saying, hey, well, I see you have a concern. What do you think the options are for approaching this concern? Like, what are some workarounds? I'm much more likely to lean into that with a person who's got sort of a pattern of this behavior and really use this as a learning opportunity, as opposed to the person who never complains. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is pretty rare. Help me understand where you're coming from and where your head's at. So anyway, but I do think that recognizing the person, I think you kind of touched this when you said communication style. Yeah. And a lot of it is that sort of pattern of behavior.
Well, it's all of it. It's the pattern of behavior. It's their motivation, right? Like we talked about a little bit earlier. And it's also how they process and accept information. So I feel like all 3 of those are going to be key in how you handle this conversation with them. But granted that we couldn't go back in time and handle this conversation from the beginning this way. So here is this practice owner, and now she's got a team member, a technician that's kind of feeling defeated because her idea is now not happening. So she had a A+ idea with the team that is now the team's unsure about it, and they've got the technician who brought up the complaint. So what does this practice owner do now in this moment?
All right. So part of it is kind of think about what you want to do. And I will tell you this. I sort of gave my beliefs at the beginning. I think this is positive. Let's just say this is what the team wants to do. Let's say they are genuinely excited about it, or they were, and now they're kind of down about it, which is what I'm hearing here. I think what I would do, honestly, is I would talk to the person with the concerns, and I would say, I really want to do this. How can we make this work? Like, what are the things that we can do? How can we make this as low stress as possible? Because it is important.
Yeah.
And I would kind of push them for answers. And if they're just like, you just can't do it, I'd be like, no, I think this is really important. I think it's good for the community. I would give them my whys, my reasons. And I would say, you got to help me make this as good as it can be. What does that even look like? And maybe propose some out of the box ideas. Maybe there's heats. Maybe we have the small dogs at 8 a.m. and the medium sized dogs at 10, and and whatever, and something like that to spread the load across so many dogs. But think outside the box. But then ultimately, I think what's going to happen probably is I'm going to bring the team together, and through whatever medium is appropriate for the team, I'm going to say, guys, I love this idea. And I would say why I love it. And I would say it in front of everybody. I really want to support the person who came with this fun idea. And even if we ultimately decide not to do it, I want her or him to hear from me, I love this idea. I am excited about it. I really want to make it work. I think that there's a great opportunity here. Mm-hmm. And I also really appreciate the insight that this is not as fear-free as we want it to be, or there is concern about our patients being upset, or there being dog bites or things like that. That is a valid concern, and I want to honor it. And now I've kind of honored both sides.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to say, guys, I want you to help me come up with ways that we can do this event and be true to our commitment to keep pets safe and to minimize fear. And so one of the things that I would so that's how I would say it. Ultimately, I think at some point I would reframe the issue. And this is an interesting case of reframing. If the issue is about reducing fear, that's a hard battle to fight, right? Because ultimately the least fearful thing is to just stay home. I think I would reframe this as, I want to make something special for our patients. I think that we can do something to improve the quality of life for pets and people in our area. And if I frame it that way, doing something special, making the quality of life of pets and people in our area better, fear-free or reducing stress, it's definitely a part of that, but it is not the driving way that we're looking at this.
Yep.
And so I do think that that's the point. And again, I still think that I can be fair and I can honor the principles of trying to reduce stress in our patients. And again, I hope people aren't listening to this and going, gosh, Andy really didn't give a crap about that. That's not true. But I truly do believe in.
I'm going to tell Marty Becker himself about this episode.
He's going to get it from
headphones on.
7 people. Yeah.
Just the part in which you were talking about fear-free, none of the rest of the episode.
At the beginning.
Conveniently that piece.
Anyway, I do, but that's how I am. It's like, I think low stress is important.
Yeah.
I am, if you said, Andy, which one do you care about more, reducing fear or making life better for pets? I would say those are kind of a weird comparison, but honestly for me, I want to make life better for pets, and that's what I'm trying to do. So anyway, there's a framing component around that I would lean into. So anyway, that's a long winding way around.
No, I think it's perfect.
But that is what I would do. I would also, it would sound kind of disjointed like what you just heard.
Yeah.
Because I would talk from the heart and I would say to the team, like, this is how I feel.
Yeah.
And I really want this, guys. And it means the world to me that you guys are excited about it and I'm excited about it. And we want to be true to our values.
I really like that a lot. I think I'm 100% on board. I absolutely would be reframing this. I might even put in there some things about socialization and why that's important in pets too, because that's also like what you're talking about, how do we make life better for pets? And a lot of times puppy socialization was a big topic for a while. We were telling them don't socialize because they don't have their vaccines, and now they grow up not being socialized around other dogs. And so really in the long run, this could be actually a way to socialize pets so that they do. But I agree with you about the framing in, like, how can we make this a positive thing? How can we go back to the value and the why of why we're having it? Because at the end of the day, everybody does have probably a little bit of a different why or motivation as to why they're having it. But you as a clinic have a team why, a value, something that you're trying to bring into the community, whether it's the community part of, fear-free education, whether it's pet education, whatever it is that you're doing, bringing it down to that why. I might have a meeting with the technician who had their feelings hurt first also. So I would have a one-on-one with the complainer of this is I don't want to call her that. I apologize. That's not, I don't want to call her complainer. The concerner.
Well, to who it did concern.
To whom it did concern, that person. I would definitely have a meeting with them and to exactly what you said, in trying to find out what the specifics are. But I would also have a meeting with that person of like, hey, I just want you to know, I love your idea. The team wants your idea. I don't want you to feel defeated. I think that it's perfectly normal for you to feel defeated in this situation. I want you to think about this exercise that's coming up, this meeting, as a way to make this event even better. So we might poke holes in it, but I want you to have a little bit of tough skin in that, just because we're going to try and troubleshoot now so that the real issues don't happen at the actual dog walk. And then when I have that meeting, I might even frame it in that way. Like, okay, this is after I tell them my values and all of the things about why this is important. Like, all right, let's talk about this because this is a really valid concern and I want to address this. What are some ways in which this event could go wildly well and wildly bad, right? And so that way we can have mechanisms of like, what do we need to do? And one of my favorite ways of this is like really gamifying it. I think you've done this with Uncharted in the past, where you put us through a game where it was like, you made up some crazy scenario of like, there was a virus and like this is happening to Uncharted. And now you upset all of the attendees at Uncharted. Yes. What do we do? And you kind of had us role play that entire scenario. And it was like a super silly scenario of like a virus that affected the conference or something. Yeah. But like we as a team collaborated. Okay, well, if that were to happen, this person's role is this, so they would know what to do here. And this person's role is this, and they would know what to do here. And so this way, the team has this kind of like emergency drill of like what happens if there is an altercation or if there is, a dog that's not friendly, but also like problem solving the ways in which they can make this a fear-friendly place so that those ideas do come from them. Because like, as you said, some of these concerns, you might not hit the right one. And I could sit here and I could tell you all of the different ways in which our team had fear-free events all the time, whether it was using their FAS scores, whether it was having those safety zones, the communication. Like we made it very obvious that like it is for dog-friendly dogs only. If you have an FAS 4 or 5 dog, they should probably stay home. And like in clinic, you would have clients that'd be like, oh, that dog walk sounds great. and you would look at their pet score, you'd be like, well, I don't know if Fluffy would really enjoy it. It doesn't seem like he's very comfortable around other dogs. And they'd be like, yeah, you're right. Like, it's a very honest conversation that you can have with clients. So there's all these different ways in which you can absolutely have this event and still put in those measures. But all of those measures are going to be a lot more effective if they're coming from your team, because they're their ideas. They're the ones that are going to be putting it together. And so I would probably incorporate some kind of fun activity that way in that whole meeting of like, what are some ways in which this can go wrong? And what is the drill if it were to happen, right? And so sure, if there's some crazy scenarios about like this or that, we can kind of joke and laugh, but like really being able to look at the event of like, what are our safety fallbacks if something were to happen? So I would probably include that as part of my whole team meeting, and just continue to encourage collaboration. Remember that the way in which we encourage that collaboration too is a lot of asking questions. So for this meeting, like I said, I don't want to come in with my ideas. I want to make sure I'm asking the questions. I'm like, what about this? And I might need to set some ground rules because I don't want people to get spicy. That's dependent on the team that you have, I think, more than anything. Sure. But if we have to set some ground rules of like, okay, well, like, let's make sure we're being respectful and, giving each other time to talk and that kind of thing. I think that's more dependent on like what kind of brainstorming and collaboration you have in your meetings, but hopefully you won't need to set ground rules, but it might be a good idea if people are heated or spicy about it.
Oh, yeah. If this is a contentious issue, yeah. It's funny. I had not thought about that. I love that exercise. So, yeah, I'm a huge fan of...
I can't believe you forgot about that. That's like one of my favorite exercises we've ever done at Uncharted was the way that we sat down and as a group. And I think we've done it multiple times in different scenarios.
I like to run that stuff in different ways.
Yeah.
The basic gist just for people who are thinking about it is if we were going to go do this thing and there were some concerns about it, I would come up with over the top goofy scenarios. Like there's a man wearing a dog costume and he shows up and then one of the dogs is freaked out and gets off leash. What are we going to do? And then let them work in groups of 4 people. And they need to, like, you guys tell me, like, we just had a dog pop the leash. What are we doing? And, like, that type of training, again, I try to make it as goofy as possible, it's something that's not going to be really scary, upsetting. But also, the gist of it is dog off leash. Mm-hmm. And then give them 10 minutes to work in groups to figure out what do we do? Like, what happens with our team? Where do we go? What's the protocol here? And honestly, anything you do with them that they have to work through like this, they will remember 10 times better than if you tell them, this is what we do if someone gets off leash, make them go through the process. But the learning opportunity is huge. It's very active learning. And then they hear from other people who are like, well, we would do this. And we would, we need to make sure that we have people stationed over in this area. I'm like, great. And then they're making your safety plan. And the fact that they've gone through this process and come up with a safety plan makes them feel much better about it. Yeah. Now, when we did it with Uncharted, we weren't obviously doing a safety plan because we were running a conference. Yeah. But it was a lot of like, what happens if someone shows up and swears that they paid to register?
Yeah.
But we have no record of them. Like, what happens? And like, I don't know what happens. Like, I hope you guys figure this out. I got no plan. But then we come back and it was like, oh, very clearly, this would be the plan and these would be the people that were involved. And now everyone goes, yep, that's what we would do. And we just left the meeting and everyone felt relaxed. They felt capable of handling what would happen. And
it definitely built our confidence, I think. Yes. Like, I left that meeting being like, I can handle any situation thrown at me, like.
Well, I tell you, as a leader, I left as the leader going, my people are on it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was great. Well,
one last thing before we wrap up, because I feel like we're coming up close to time. I would also, don't forget, after this event happens, to celebrate the wins, because those are going to be impactful. And what I do mean by that is, so like, as a marketing manager, I put together for clinics some local community events, and some of those pet parents would literally come to us crying. Like, I think it was like pictures of Santa or something silly, but it was like they were so happy that they got this moment with their pets because they, normally couldn't get it otherwise. And it was like the last year that they thought they had this pet with them, and like super emotional moment for them. And those are all really big wins of the event. And I think sometimes we can put together like a fundraising event or a dog walk and just look at the like funds that we raised and say, oh, that was great. We raised $600 for our angel fund. Like, whoa. But look at more than that. Try to share the impact, the fun that people had, those, try to put it in the newspaper if you can. Like I used to send out press releases. The team gets so proud and honored about those things that then later on they look back at the event and be like, oh yeah, we had a little bit of conflict in the beginning because we had this, but man, did we really come together and make an impact in our community? And so don't forget that the event doesn't end when the event ends. Try to make sure you're highlighting the wins, the celebrations, the impact that you made so that they get jazzed and excited to do it again in the future.
That sounds fantastic. That's all I got.
Yeah, that's all I got. Cool.
It's fun. Yeah. Well, Maria Pirita, thanks for doing this with me. It's a super fun episode. We got to talk about some fun stuff. I
know. It's fun. Me too.
Awesome. Well, guys, thanks for being here. Take care of yourselves, everybody. We'll talk to you later on.
And that's a wrap on another episode of the Uncharted Veterinary Podcast. If you want team fun that will not go wrong, check out the show notes for a super fun team building game, Superheroes Assemble. It's a great way to get teams talking about their strengths. And let me tell you, your clinic needs a secret handshake. Thanks, y'all, for being here. Thanks for listening. Thank you to Andy for letting me host this. Thank you to my mom for giving me the gift of gab. Without you, I'd probably stop talking at appropriate times instead of continuing like I am right now. Bye, everybody.